All right. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning. Thank you all for joining. And thank you, Raphael, for joining us again. Welcome to this session of today. Today we have Raphael coming to speak to us. Raphael has been with us for a few years already. So great to have her back. Just a couple before I leave the floor to Raphael for the session. Couple of housekeeping rules, a reminder. We're on the webinar version of Zoom. So if you'd like to interact with us, you can either write in the chat or use the raise hand function, and then I'll bring you up to speak. And if you have a question for Raphael, you can use the Q&A. So this is different from the chat. You can use the Q&A so that we can differentiate between maybe when you answer Raphael's questions and when you have a question. Raphael, a quick question. For the questions, do you have time that you want to leave at the end, or do you have time that you want to, or did you take them as they come, or do you have some times during the session?
Yeah, so thanks for that. As I was telling you earlier, I want to adjust my approach a little bit, making sure that I make it as relevant to our audience. So I'll be happy to take questions throughout the session. We do have 2 hours together, so should give us, plenty time to go through a couple of slides and answer all of your questions. But just to break the momentum, I think, people should be comfortable to raise their hand, use the chat, and maybe ask for clarification or ask their questions as they come up for them, right? So I
Mhm.
suggest, we keep it very fluid, very open. And certainly, I want it to be, really interactive, and I want it to be the most kind of um, relevant and aligned with their needs and their requirements. So, yeah, I suggest we'll go along. I see we already have raising hands, so that's good news. So please come on and join the session with me, because it's as interesting for me as it is for you to understand where you're at and how I can help. So yeah,
Pauline,
let's.
yeah, you
Mhm.
can just unmute yourself or or
Maybe that was a mistake.
maybe that was a mistake.
That's
Yeah,
okay, Pauline.
all right. So I think we can get started.
All right, excellent. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night to all of you. It's a massive attendance today, about 24 people. So I think that's as big as I could hope for. And thank you very much for your time. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I hope it will also be a pleasure for you to be part of this session. I want it to be very interactive, and I want to make sure that all of your questions and pain points are being addressed. I did get a list of potential companies and entrepreneurs that might be interested in this session, but it doesn't mean that this is correct. It's just based on, what I would think would be most relevant. And that's why I really want you to feel comfortable asking your questions in case I didn't really hit the sweet spot, or unless your sector or your industry or your project is slightly um, away from my background knowledge and expertise. So again, it's just as interesting for me as it is for you to attend this webinar, and I want it to be really value added for yourselves, right? So feel free to make it work for you by giving me some feedback and asking some tricky questions, because I like that. So I am assuming that you can see my slide deck here. Augustin, can you confirm?
Yeah, I can see the slide deck, and I think it's loading for the full screen.
Okay, that could be wrong though. That better?
No, I still see. Ah, yeah, now it's good.
All right. So The name of my company is called iNutrition. My background is in product development and innovation. I have about 30 years of experience in the food industry. And then I kind of drifted into medical device, pharma industry. Um, in the food industry, I suppose I was acting as an SME, as a subject matter expert, may, mainly in product design and formulation. And then from that role, I drifted into an end-to-end project management role, leading multidisciplinary teams like quality, regulatory, marketing, finance, supply chain. So just broadening my understanding of innovation across the business and across um, the team. And then for the last couple of years, I was able to repurpose my experience as a project manager, but discover other industries that are either, very different, like medical device, or that overlap with the food industry. Everything to do with, biotech and biopharma, obviously, is somehow relevant to the food industry. And in those type of roles, I act as a tech transfer project manager, so I can no longer act as an SME because I don't have this engineering mindset or skill set. However, I can act as a project manager, and what I do then is I facilitate scale up and commercialization of processes and products with external partners like CMOs and CDMOs and CROs. So it's kind of, bringing this kind of holistic approach around innovation, around product development, process optimization. This is what I do. I also have a small consultancy business called iNutrition, and with iNutrition, I kind of get involved on the operational or tactical or strategic aspects of companies or organizations that are looking at the food industry. So, in a nutshell, this is me. I just like the variety of project, and I like learning, and I like kind of, being able to think differently. So, I'm very interested in design, and I think it's very relevant to the food industry. And from what I see about your profile, you're also trying to create and isolate a business opportunity that is commercially viable, but very important to kind of keep our end user and customer or consumer in mind when we do that. So whether you're in B2B or B2C space, I think my intention for today is really trying to bring this kind of overview of what innovation would look like for you. And please feel free to chime in and ask questions that are specifically relevant to your business or to your project or to some of the challenges that you're currently addressing. So let's say food, functional foods, functional beverages, dietary supplements, any of those specialty ingredients that fit into that space. This is really the area where I think I can help. And I will share with you a couple of slides. I don't want to make it too heavy, but at the same time, it is helpful to have this as a support so that you can understand visually, what I know and how that can be applicable to you. So this is what I propose. And again, very open to your suggestion as we go through those slides together. So they are kind of pointers, really. They are just kind of prompts, and hopefully this will either confirm what you know already or disconfirm what you think you knew, and you might just have a different way to look at things, right? So what I'm hoping to do with you today is, focusing on what is product development and how that this fit into what we call innovation. As I mentioned, I think, as much as we want to innovate in terms of maybe business model, operating model, we need to keep the end user in mind. So it has to be value centric. It has to be consumer centric. So I want to bring a little bit of focus on that. Then, the way people like me think is, innovation by design. So how do you bring innovation into your team, into your business, so that you can have either differentiation point or USP, or that you can, beat the competition. It has to be a strong kind of element of what you do. And from what I can see, you're already looking at that. But again, someone like me would always try to think about innovation by design, right? It's just not something that we add, on an ad hoc basis at a specific point. It's really something that we try to bring into the equation at every stage of the business. So um, then I also want to talk to you about life cycle management of innovation. So we don't just um, innovate, on the one and then, put it aside and forget all about it. We obviously need to milk it. We need to extract value out of innovation, right? So how do we strategize innovation within a business is also very important. And then in terms of process, I mean, you probably know all of those things already, but we do like to have something that is structured, something that is harmonized to facilitate some of those innovation projects, right? So we'll go through the process together. Anything here that is missing that you would like to cover, maybe just on the agenda? So please chime in. Let me know if there is anything that you're missing. So what I would like to show to you is just, a little bit of context about innovation, right? So especially in this kind of dynamic climate that we are evolving in, it is just kind of interesting to make sure that there are so many different layers and moving parts when we talk about new product development and innovation. We somehow need to align those together, right? They don't always align on day one, but at some point, we do believe that the probability of all those elements to align together is high. And what we do is we probably work on a risk register to kind of see how we are going to navigate our way through this alignment. So in the food space, environment is starting to be extremely important and at the core of innovation. And the social and cultural aspect around food and beverages is also extremely important and very much part of the mix that we need to take into account. Either maybe the market in which we are going to launch the product, probably in terms of maturity, in terms of consumer insights, that could be very important. The technology aspect of the project is also extremely important in terms of technology, how advanced or embryonic some of those technologies are, and what is the realistic time to market in terms of scale up and commercialization. So we need to find our way through that. And then the physical aspect in terms of engaging with the target audience, right? And there is one that I see being missing here, which I think is instrumental in innovation. I better add it, is supply chain and logistics. I think, this is completely kind of undervalued opportunity around innovation, but I have seen many companies really thrive in supply chain and innovation. Supply chain and logistic innovation, with very successful businesses coming out of it. Yes, did we have a question? Did I see something?
Yeah, I see we have the bottom in the Q&A, we have a question from Francesco. I'm going to read it out loud so that everybody can hear it. Since food is mainly produced by smallholder farmers, how traceability or impact to these communities enter in this contextual NPD?
Yeah, so I think, that's exactly the point that I was trying to highlight that is missing on this slide. I think the whole kind of traceability and supply chain is instrumental. I won't answer that question just right now, but I think it's extremely relevant. And how do we kind of build this ecosystem and this network for some of those different kind of projects and and businesses, very relevant. But it's quite a complex question. So I think we put it aside. There might be other questions going along the same lines, but I do agree that, this is an extremely important part of the strategy that needs to be built into those type of projects. Absolutely. And massive opportunity for innovation. Absolutely. Is that okay? Sorry, Francesco. I'm just putting you aside, but I think it's very important, and I'm sure some of the experts will come in and have sessions dedicated to that because this is extremely important when we look at opportunities in the food and beverage industry. Right. So moving on to this kind of, again, I'm just trying to set the scene here and provide you with a little bit of a landscape of what we're talking about. Another slide that I like, it's not mine as you can see, but I still like it, and how design is so important when we talk about innovation. And, the question here that you can ask yourself is how disruptive is your project, your technology, and what is the best strategy to approach it, right? So there are some projects that are very much driven by the consumer, and there are other projects that are quite proactive and haven't at all been commercialized. So it's just kind of an interesting question to ask yourself in terms of how does it fit into this diagram here. Um, because in terms of maturity, in terms of readiness, whether it is from a technology or a service or a consumer perspective, it's just very important to kind of understand what the approach is going to be. A lot of it is probably going to be driven by the regulatory landscape. But again, I spoke about those moving parts that need to be aligned. And I think in terms of creating the strategy and mapping out the activity that need to take place, I would certainly suggest that you start looking at your project differently. So this slide is kind of a way of prompting you to think across the changes and also how this is going to be potentially commercialized and perceived or accepted by your audience, right? So it's just an interesting visual that I was able to copy and paste from people who are looking at innovation. Another kind of similar approach, again, just to put things into perspective, is how different disciplines are involved, obviously, throughout the process, but play a different part in the development and commercialization of those projects. So, each of you have a team and you're part of a team, and those teams are kind of designed across different functions or disciplines, and all of them will play a very important part in the development process, but they will be more relevant and maybe additional resources will be required at different stages. So again, just trying to break it down into areas that you will need to address at some point. Each of you is at a different phase. Each of you is made of different teams, different expertise, different experiences, but you will obviously understand that all of that is evolving over time when we look at innovation and how am I going to ensure that I have sufficient but not too much resources at any point of time throughout the development and commercialization of your business, right? So this is just kind of a different way of looking at what's happening in that space. So this is my magic wheel. It took me a long time to put it together, but when we talk about food and when we talk about beverages, I'm often asked about, the KPIs and the KPCs and, what is relevant. And if I was trying to put it into an easy kind of format, from a consumer perspective, those are the different segments that we would be looking at and focusing on, right? So even when you are developing a new ingredients, um, you need to kind of keep it in mind, around, what is it going to look like in a food matrix, and how is this going to make an impact in the product from a consumer perspective? Is it going to enhance the nutritional profile? Is it going to enhance the shelf life? Is it a marketing exercise? Does it have a unique kind of texture and taste? But again, just a little bit of a snapshot as to what are the parameters that we are always looking at when we are developing a new product. And unfortunately, we might get those right during the development phase when we work at a small scale. And then when we try to upscale, it doesn't always um, transition into the same type of output that we are looking for. So just something to keep in mind as you are looking at the food industry. Any questions on any of those? You happy to continue? Again, another kind of interesting visual that I look at. So when I look at the competitive landscape and when I look at different prototypes, again, what we do here is we try to map out maybe some of the competitors' product, and maybe we may have two or three different prototypes, and we try to understand, do we have a unique selling point here? Do we have an area that has been identified by our consumers as being exceptional? So this could be the output of sensory panel activity, and how did that move? Where we have maybe 30 people looking at a specific product or a specific experience, and we try to gauge, how they respond to a specific offering, right? So it's kind of an interesting way of, again, visualizing how an ingredient or maybe a new product can impact our consumer against other type of product that have been developed or maybe competitors, right? So that's just an example. I think this was around coffee, right? So again, you can see some of those wording or terminology that are associated with a specific category. It will obviously change, from one product to another, but it's always very interesting to see how our consumers respond to a specific product. And as you can see, food being food, we do have this kind of individual interaction, but there is obviously a very social element associated with food consumption. And then, some of us might look at food as being very functional. Others might look at it as being extremely emotional. This is particularly relevant to coffee, actually. That's why I like it, because, we all have different feel around coffee. We all want our coffee to be made in a special way, but it resonates with a lot of us quite strongly, right? How we prepare it, how we consume it, what are our expectations. So again, kind of a way of looking at food
Um,
in a specific way. Yes, please, Augustin.
I think we have Pollen who has their hand up again. Let's see if there's a question. Pollen, you can unmute and ask your question if you wish, or was it maybe a mistake again? Ah, no, appears it was a mistake.
All
We
right,
can carry
that's
on. Sorry
fine.
for this.
No worries. No, um, really like people to feel, comfortable to chime in whenever suits. So this is a slide. It took me some time to put it together, but when we talk about food tech, when we talk about health tech, that tech piece that is new to the food industry brings a lot of interesting elements. And this slide is an attempt to represent how tech has changed the food industry, and more to be revealed, right, with your help. But as you can see here on the x-axis, so what I have is I have the product. So those are being reflected by number of different pillars here. We have the ingredients, we have the recipe, and we have the route to market. And then when we expand the product in terms of engagement with the consumer, the delivery of the product and all the support that is being created around the product has become a very important element of the offering. And pushing a little bit again, we can see that, product is almost becoming a service now. And that service can be coupled with technology. So everything has become quite blurred between food, between health and pharma. And companies then need to intentionally like kind of strategize where they're going to fit, right? So that's the x-axis and the different pillars that are associated with this. And then on the y-axis, I have tried to portray different cohorts, different consumers. So at the bottom here, we have the one that are interested in performance. They want really some kind of an instant quick fix. They are relying on food like the Red Bull or like the Monster to get their instant benefit. Then we have another segment. They are reactive, and those people are also looking for a short-term or medium-term response. They are the people who may have been diagnosed with maybe an issue with cholesterol or with diabetes. They go to their consultant. They are probably prescribed some medication, but on top of that, they want to adjust their lifestyle, and they're also looking for an offering that is going to support their journey towards health and wellness. So the time frame in which they are operating isn't as aggressive as the one that are into performance, but still they want to see results within the next couple of weeks or months. And then the last group that I have identified here are the ones that are more interested in proactive health. They are the one more likely to be interested in healthy aging. And in this case, time frame is much longer. We are talking about food being used over, months, if not years, right? So they see food as a very kind of proactive way of addressing their health and wellness. So it's kind of a way of merging the product with the consumer, all right? So with this slide, you can see that, whether you are looking at testing, whether you are looking at ingredients, it's just kind of a nice way of looking at this kind of end-to-end perspective that can be associated with a category or a product. And if we go into a little bit more details, I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but I just want to give you some of those signals, some of those trends and insights that are potentially aligned with the consumer, but also with the product or the service, right? So those are emerging or established trends that are currently the trigger for innovation in this space. And I am guessing that a lot of you are probably looking at one or many different aspects of those kind of innovation opportunities. Any questions on that? Because I think it's quite a heavy slide, but at the same time, it's the most kind of simple way that I could find to help you to understand how to expand your vision of your project or your business and how that fits into the overall landscape of the food and beverage industry, and especially food tech, health tech, that's kind of what we're talking about. So some of it you might decide to take on yourself. Some of it you can build some strategic collaboration or partnership with other companies that are more establish in one area, and that could complement your service or your offering. All right. So you can decide, how you're going to connect the dots here, right? And maybe the time frame in which you're hoping to enter a specific space and differentiate your company into a specific area. All right. Okay, so building on that, this is another slide that I have put together as well, trying to look at it from the consumer perspective. And what we have here is we have a pyramid that is trying to reflect how we can decouple our consumer, and how all of those consumers are going to engage with a messaging or a product or a service in different ways. So the bottom of the pyramid here, you can see that's our mass market consumers, and they are looking for affordable nutrition, right? Everybody at this stage is very aware of the impact that nutrition would have on the long-term health and wellness, and mass market consumers are perfectly entitled to expect brands and companies to offer nutrition at an affordable price, right? And it's focused on value, and they are looking for ingredients and products that are going to deliver even within their limited budget. All right. Above that, we have a slightly smaller segment, and they are the ones that, are a little bit more choosy and who are willing to pay a little bit extra for some of those functional foods and beverages. They are typically focused on performance, different health benefit. Maybe it is athletic, maybe it's energy, maybe it's weight management, and they are willing to pay a little bit extra to have a product that is aligned with their preferences or their performance-driven choices. Above that, we have the lifestyle consumers, again, a little bit more specific, more targeted. They are looking for customized nutrition. Those people, would be more specific in terms of their needs. They might be interested in beauty from within. They might be interested in mental health. And again, the profile of the product that they're interested in would have to be more specific and more refined and more targeted. And on top of that pyramid, we have personalized nutrition, whereby there is even a stronger sense of um, needs, potentially close to medical nutrition. And those people are probably looking at a service beyond the product. They have very specific nutritional needs, and they are willing to pay additional um, money or premium for a specific product, right? It also goes well beyond the product in terms of testing, in terms of service to support them on their journey towards health and wellness, right? And in that space, then you can imagine all of those drugs to support patients on their journey towards diabetes or obesity, or some very specific conditions, right? So again, just want to give you a little bit of perspective as to, how this fits into the consumer journey, relying on food and beverage to address their health and wellness requirements and expectations, right? So from a branding, from a business perspective, this will be completely different positioning and narrative and marketing strategy, route to market that is required, right? So I don't want to state the obvious, you might be all familiar to that, but I think it's just very important to refine or define those boundaries, right? So the question here is, where do you fit? How are you going to get there? What is the persona of your target audience? How is your product, your technology, your strategy going to align with hitting the sweet spot for those specific cohorts? Any questions? All right. So maybe, building on that pyramid, because I think it's quite a nice way of of being able to visualize what's happening here. And again, what I have tried to do is align our different segments with different expectations. Are they looking for short-term support? Are they looking for long-term support from a brand or from a company? Is it driven by the need? Is it driven by choice? I think this is very important to understand. And on the right-hand side here, you have a little bit of an insight on what the route to market strategy would look like, and also an understanding on some of those margins that are associated with those different business model or operating models, right? So that needs to be taken into account in terms of return on investment, in terms of building that kind of ecosystem, that network of stakeholders and potentially strategic partners to help you to succeed, right? All right. Maybe one thing I didn't say about that slide, and we will find it here again, actually. Another kind of angle on the same slide is when we look at customized nutrition or personalized nutrition. On top of this slide, you can see how people like me divide life stages in different kind of groups, and those have very different needs and preferences. So their nutritional requirements are different, their lifestyle are different, how they use the product and consume the product is different, how they buy the product is different, right? So you can see from left to right, we have our babies, so infant formula, baby food, and then toddlers, then we have children. We have adults, again, male and female would have some very different needs throughout the different stages of their life. We have athletes, we have our pregnant and lactating ladies, we have our family kind of group that also have different requirements. And then as we progress through our life, we have elderly people who again have different requirements from a nutritional perspective, mobility, health benefit, all of that, again, is very unique. And then on the right-hand side, you can see how our pets really have taken over in terms of budget, in terms of their place in the family unit, and there are fantastic opportunities in the food and beverage industry for those specific, um, I suppose, um, I was going to say human beings, not quite, but some people think they are, and they have really become part of the family unit. And their own kind of requirements have been acknowledged, and multiple different offering being available on the market at this stage. So this is just a different kind of visual around the same slide. And again, just making it very clear on where you're going to sit with your product, with your service, with your technology, potentially strategizing different route to market or product to market to meet those different cohorts and profile from a consumer perspective, right? So whether it is B2B or B2C, just don't forget the overall picture here. Okay, so this is pretty much the end of part one. Again, I'm just going to take a break. We have covered, how product development fits into the overall context of innovation, how we need to keep our consumer in mind from a value perspective, but also nutritional and lifestyle requirements that are very unique, and how it is very important to look at innovation by design and all the different areas across the business model or the operating model that can be driven by innovation, maybe to be more cost effective, maybe to be more differentiated. This is kind of important. Any questions?
Any questions in the chat or raise your hand? I guess
Okay.
that must mean you're super clear, Raphael.
I wish I was, but it is difficult to talk about innovation, right? It's one word that can be used and misused in so many different ways. So I was trying to bring it down to how we can look at it for the food industry, whether it is ingredients, application, and consumer, right? So how is all of that going to fit with each other? The next two topics are very much driven by the process around product development and innovation. And often, people like to again see how this can be done. And the way it usually works is we start, by brainstorming, and we may have maybe 5 to 10 different ideas that come across different level of the organization, different activities. And then as we go a little bit deeper in terms of the regulatory framework, how feasible a product or a process is, engaging with different consumers. So we start kind of refining a little bit how those ideas might look like in the marketplace. And then we are going to hopefully focus on 1, 2, or 3 projects and proceed with the launch, right? So that's how we usually look at innovation. Loads of different models have obviously been suggested. What is more prominent at this point of time is having very early engagement with the consumer. So the testing of those different products and services would be brought in sooner rather than later to continue to fertilize some of those ideas as we are going through the process. So slightly different approach here, whereby we continue to um, amplify and stimulate innovation within the organization. Sometimes we might decide to put some of those ideas aside for the time being, and then we can bring those back to life at a later stage. And sometimes, we might just discard them. But I think it is just a little bit more open-minded to see the process of innovation not always being free flowing and always not being linear, right? I think, everything is kind of so dynamic, whether it is the regulatory landscape, whether it is the consumer needs or preferences, trends and insights, markets kind of evolution. So by keeping something a little bit more broader, I think organizations are potentially more likely to stay innovative and competitive and relevant to the marketplace. So again, I'm not saying there is anything easy here, and I'm certainly not saying there is just, one way of looking at it. But I think it is important as business owners and entrepreneurs to be a little bit flexible in how you're going to strategize and implement innovation in your business. Sometimes it's not the right time, but it might be the right time in a few months or in a few years' time, right? So keeping a good register of the risks or the opportunities is very important in the food and beverage industry. Right. Again, just trying to structure innovation a little bit and how we can identify some of those different phases and some of those different processes and stakeholders that are involved. So here you can see different pillars trying to give you a little bit of flow in terms of what's happening when we look at product development and innovation in the food industry. So we are going to start with the sourcing of some of those materials, some of those ingredients. We are going to look at protection of the product and how we are going to manufacture this product. And then we are going to look at it from a consumer perspective and how this is going to be delivered, right? So it's a little bit simplistic, but at the same time, it's a starting point just to give you a little bit of perspective on what's involved here when we look at product development and innovation in the food industry, right? So, it's like a bit like cooking in your kitchen, but um, we can see that being amplified at a different scale when we look at uh, manufacturing of different food products. If we look at it in a little bit more detail, you can see here that we need to start looking at it from a business perspective. So again, loads of different tasks that need to be addressed or explored throughout the different stages. So the first stage here is to empathize. So I told you earlier to make sure that we keep our consumer, our customer in mind. So what are those insights? What are those trends that are going to solidify, I suppose, the commercial opportunity that we have identified in our project? The second stage is the design. Okay, how are we going to put this product together? And the third stage is the launch, right? How are we going to commercialize? So you can see that, there are some key phases there, and we will have to have some very objective stage gate and parameters, variable, to make a decision as to whether we are going to proceed or not with the next step. In terms of cost, there is nothing cheap in that space. We are still talking about I would think at least 20 or 30,000 euros or US dollars to go through all of that process. So we often become very emotional when we develop those type of products, but there has to be some um, key milestone and also hard questions being asked at different stages to manage risk for those type of projects, right? So again, just want to give you a bit of a perspective on what's needed. Obviously, every project is different, but overall, throughout my experience, those would be the common kind of activities that are required when we want to develop and launch a new product. So in terms of budget, I mentioned 20 to 30 grand. In terms of timeline, I think anything below 9 months is a little bit unrealistic. 12 months is still aggressive, but it is possible. In terms of model, whether you're going to do that in-house or whether you're going to outsource or whether you're going to find a hybrid model that's going to work for you, everything is open. It's on the table for discussion. Up to you to decide, which path makes more sense at a specific point of time and then can be reviewed throughout the project or the business. Any questions? I hope it's not too heavy to take on, but again, trying to make things a little bit more simple and easy to digest for you to understand what's involved here. All right, so similar type of exercise. What is the output? What can we expect from different stages? What are the activities that need to take place? So this is particularly relevant to a food or a beverage type of product. We find our different stage gate there, our different steps, and then we find some of those key activities that need to take place for each of the different stages. So we look at it from a product point of view, we look at it from a process point of view, we look at it from a manufacturing site perspective, but in general, this is what we are talking about. And at every stage, we are going to end up with prototypes or products. And ideally, what we'll do is we will test that product in terms of functionality, in terms of nutrition, and more importantly, in terms of consumer and customer appeal, right? So let's say for a product in the pet food category, we are going to evaluate it with the customer, the individual who's going to buy the product, and we are also potentially going to test it with the consumer, right? So cats or dogs or birds or whatever, to see how the product is perceived and accepted by specific different audience, right? Okay. Again, I want to try to bring your awareness to the dependency of those activities and how It's not a linear process. There are some very clear connections across the different stages to identify those key performance indicators, those key sensory attributes, and make sure that those USPs or differentiation points can be repeated when we scale the process or the product into commercialization, right? So don't ever kind of underestimate the importance of that, perspective on the commercial opportunity that you are evaluating. And I think, having this kind of long-term kind of prospect and vision is just very important, no matter where you're at on your journey towards the development and commercialization. Here, I am just trying to give you an insight of the different functions and disciplines that collaborate usually very well when they develop a food product. So we have our food scientists, um, we have our nutritionists. They are particularly relevant when we talk about customized or personalized nutrition. The chefs, people who have culinary expertise, are extremely valuable because they spend a lot of time in kitchens and hotels. They are in direct contact with consumers, and they have a flair for sensory experience that the food scientists or the nutritionists don't always have. So I have found some very interesting output coming when those disciplines work together. Marketing is also extremely important to be brought into the equation sooner rather than later because they also have a very strong view on the market and some of those trends and consumer insights. So it's not always a given that those disciplines work together in a synergistic manner, but I certainly would suggest that you try to bring those together sooner rather than later because they all have a very strong contribution to an idea and can really make a big difference on the design or the formulation of a product, right? And and you know, at the bottom of this slide, you can see how um, sometimes they they can be decoupled as well, but they can really bring some interesting magic together when they are working closely together out at the outset of a product like that, right? So the food industry is usually associated with, the retail sector. And then in parallel to that, we have food service, but which is more kind of hospitality. And I think, there is an opportunity here to potentially get those to work together and be extremely relevant in terms of testing, in terms of consumer insights. We have seen that a lot of those kind of emerging trends come from the food service and can be extremely valuable to understand what is acceptable and not from a consumer perspective. So again, trying to challenge some of those um, standard way of looking at innovation. We really need to work across different discipline and categories here. If we were trying to look at product development and innovation from a linear perspective, I think I
Um,
have touched on that already. Yes?
I see we have a hand raised from Abdul. I don't know if you want to finish your slide or if we should move to his question.
Yes, please, Abdul.
Yeah, Abdul, you can unmute yourself now if you want to ask your question.
Yes, thank you. You listen. Yeah, you hear me. Thank you. This is a really very great presentation, giving us a kind of a bird's view about everything what is happening. And in terms of ingredient, for example, like a food ingredient in a B2B a B2B market, where does that fit into this flow? For example, yeah. B2B ingredients, where does that fit here? Whether it's a nutraceutical or infant formula or for a food.
Yes. So if we are looking at what I call specialty ingredient for the food industry, we would certainly need to look at the application, Abdul, right? So we can't just think about this in isolation. So the question is, what are the key characteristics or component of my ingredient that is going to fit into a specific category, but also meet the requirements or the preferences of a specific cohort. So for every ingredient, let's say, we need to characterize this ingredient, maybe nutrition, formability, gelation. There are a lot of functional properties that needs to be characterized and also a good kind of nutritional profile. And what you do then is you ask yourself about what is going to be the best fit from a category perspective. Is it going to be for plant-based? Is it going to be for infant nutrition? Is it going to be for jam or bread, right? So you need to do a good bit of mapping and potentially prototyping to see how this ingredient is going to fit into a specific category. To be honest, a lot of the science is already available, right? In the sense that we know how all of those food products are being manufactured. So you need to understand what is the best fit for your ingredient in terms of functionality and nutritional profile. But beyond that, Abdul, you also need to understand whether your ingredient and the format in which that ingredient is going to be consumed is going to resonate with a specific audience, whether it is a baby, whether it is an athlete, whether it is an elderly woman, or whether it is a dog. So that's part of the market research. That's part of the consumer research exercise that you need to do.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's very, very clear now. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of it can be done on paper, and then a lot of it might need to be validated on the floor, on the ground, right? So all of those kind of aspects would need to be mapped out and understand how you're going to get value for your ingredient and how well it's going to be accepted and perceived by your target audience. And to answer your question, because it comes up quite a lot, Abdul, right? But when people like you look at specialty ingredient, from a manufacturer perspective, there is an expectation there that that ingredient is going to fit into their process and into their category. So they won't just, make any allowances, or they won't necessarily embrace your ingredient unless you make life easier or better for them. So even so you're focused on B2B with a specialty ingredient, you really need to look at it from a purchaser perspective, like the food manufacturer, but also the consumer, and how this ingredient is going to fit into a formulation and how this is going to resonate from the consumer perspective. So even so, your primary objective is in the B2B space, you won't get away with just that in the food industry. There is an element and an expectation that you understand B2C as well.
Yes, I agree 100%. Thanks.
Yeah. So, I mean, in fact, it's a good segue into this slide because as much as you're fitting into the left side of this slide with the design, because it's made out of different ingredients, including yours, we somehow need to really understand the nutrition and the functionality of your ingredient into a specific formulation, because it won't be just your ingredient. It's probably going to be blended with other different ingredients. How is processing going to affect your ingredient? And then how this is going to fit into a specific product and being consumed, right? So having this kind of end-to-end understanding of how your ingredient is going to fit into that journey and make sure that it keeps its unique properties, but also that it's going to be suitable for a specific food category and a specific uh, consumer or customer. Shelf life is also a very important aspect of the development activity that we do. You can see it on the right hand side here. So it's kind of linked to what I mentioned at the beginning around supply chain and logistic. So that ingredient or that technology or that product needs to meet specific requirements from a regulatory perspective, consumer quality, safety, not only when it leaves the factory, but throughout its shelf life, right? So that's a very important part of the development and commercialization activities when we look at food manufacture. So that's an important aspect in terms of testing, in terms of consumer acceptance that needs to be incorporated and budgeted for because it's not cheap either. Okay, competitive landscape. I touched on that earlier, and from what I can see about the profile of our audience, science and technology is a big part of what you do and how you're going to succeed in bringing your product or your technology to market. So, there are many different opportunities in science to create IP, to create differentiation. So I think it's a good way to look at the competitive landscape. Quality. So in the food space, a lot of products are not always meeting the quality requirements. So I also see this as an opportunity to succeed and to bring differentiation into your project, right? So again, it's up to you to identify those USPs, but it's always an important kind of mapping exercise that we do when we look at market research and risk management of those type of projects as well to see, how does it fit into the competitive landscape. Other aspects that can be taken into account is around the service. So we spoke quite a lot about how we go beyond the product in the food industry. So service that complement the product can also be a massive competitive advantage. Price, I mean, if you can get same quality for a much cheaper price, tapping into this mass consumer market at the base of our pyramid that we spoke about earlier. Again, massive opportunity. It doesn't always have to be, rocket science. We see some very successful products that have lower sugar, better fat profile, better kind of nutritional profile, and that are very competitive and tapping into this kind of mass market customer that are expecting nutrition and value out of the food industry, right? So another massive opportunity if that's the one that you want to tackle. Again, I try to give you a good kind of breakdown of how food can be perceived at the emotional level. So is your product going to really resonate into some of those strong feelings and emotions that consumers have? I'm thinking about, losing weight. I'm thinking about high performing athletes that are really relying on some of those products to be the best that they can be at any point of time. Lifestyle is a massive one, convenience, shelf life, like having products that are suitable for, hot climate, for example, or products that might be available in a ready-to-mix format as opposed to ready to drink. All of those kind of aspects can be mapped out as well to understand the competitive landscape. In fact, I suggest that you go for the three or develop even your own maps, right? And with the relevant parameters to look at the competitive landscape. All right. I keep talking about innovation, and I just want to again use the same kind of visual there to give you an insight of how you can bring innovation at so many different stages of your product or your service when we look at the food industry. And as I said, there are companies out there that have never seen a food product, that don't manufacture food product, and yet that are extremely successful in the food industry. So having a good understanding of your target audience and having some very kind of good market research, but also look at supply chain and logistic and how you can create brands and really hit the sweet spot from a consumer perspective and moving the elements of the supply chain and value chain in such a way that you can create very commercial, very successfully commercially viable businesses, right? So there are a number of beverages out there from brands that, again, all they have done is creating a brand and then they have outsourced the manufacturer and they have developed a very kind of strong network of products being moving around the world and some strong kind of marketing strategy, commercial strategy to engage with consumer. It's extremely impressive. And in fact, I've seen more innovation coming from people who don't know anything about the food industry and are looking at it, with completely different eyes and perspective from a business standpoint. So, very important to kind of understand, where is the value here? Am I going to spend my time and my budget into developing a fantastic product that I don't even know if it's going to be scalable? Or am I going to really isolate the strength of our team or our technology, develop some strong IP around it or trade secret to be very unique in the marketplace and disrupt the food industry? That's kind of the different approaches that can be taken to look at business in the food sector. All right, so innovation, again, another way of making sure that you look at it from a culture perspective within your team in terms of capabilities, in terms of organization, capacity, and processes. How can you innovate and use that as a competitive advantage among yourselves or in your business? And not only today, but make sure that, this is going to stay as part of your strategy for your business, right? So again, I want to say a quick word about open innovation and how strategic collaboration can really enhance your internal kind of capability and capacity. So look at it slightly differently. Look at ways and means of building resilience within your organization, within your business, and how you can do some of that internally, but sometimes maybe looking at open innovation to enhance and complement your internal expertise or experience. Open innovation isn't something that the food industry has historically engaged with, but I think this is finally kind of shifting and changing. And I think you are the type of businesses and people with the right mindset to start bringing that into the equation, right? And really kind of maximize the value of the business by thinking a little bit differently, right? I mean, traditionally, the food industry is a little bit outdated, but this is changing, and you are the one who are promoting that change. So please continue, bring it in. Yeah, so again, probably similar type of message here, how we can really incorporate different elements of the food industry together to manage risk and increase the probability of success in the food industry. I spoke about that as well, massive overlap between nutrition, food, and health. I see, pharma being a key component of that. Cosmetic as well is also a very interesting space. Actually, Abdul, some of those food ingredients have also been extremely successful in other categories like cosmetic, right? We've seen a lot of ingredients moving from one to another, right? Beauty from within and beauty from outside and all of those things. So it's very important that you kind kind of fragment the opportunity here and see, what are the categories or even the industries and sectors in which those ingredients have an opportunity to succeed, right? It could be in cosmetic today, maybe because of the regulatory landscape or the consumer perception, and it can be in food tomorrow, right? So it's nice to kind of, plan and strategize those opportunities depending on the ingredient and on the target audience. I spoke about multidisciplinary team. Certainly, the team that have kind of an ability to look at food from a societal perspective, from a data science point of view, life science, again, that's the nexus here where we see some very strong opportunity to extract value, to be more competitive, more effective, more productive, right? So tap into that. I'm sure a lot of you are already, but I just want to confirm that this is very important. Yeah, I did speak quite a lot about that and how some of those elements are very important in terms of parameters and variables that we need to be taken into account throughout the process. So here we speak about the concept and how we need to make sure that this concept is aligned with the consumer perception or need or requirements, sourcing of the ingredients. So again, that's one for you, Abdul, whereby, your ingredient will probably be part of that sourcing and how this is going to fit into a food matrix. There are a lot of other aspects that need to be taken into account from a scientific and regulatory perspective when we bring some of those new ingredients or product into the market. When we talk about commercialization, I also spoke about the operating model. Are we going to manufacture it in-house or identify and select an external partner? So that needs to be taken into account during the scale-up. And then more importantly, during the commercialization with some binding contracts that would need to be put in place with your external partners. Any questions on any of those slides? Just trying to look at it from different angle, and I hope the message is starting to be a little bit kind of, cohesive and making sense to all of you on the different stages and how all of those are somehow connected with each other. So again, in terms of the concept, those are the key elements that need to be taken into account when we look at the food product. Sourcing of the ingredients. Actually, Abdul, that's probably one for you. How does your specialty ingredient fit into those specific aspects that will be part of the development activities? And also, if you are looking for a buyer for your ingredient, those would be the important kind of question that may be asked when you're engaging with some of those stakeholders. Again, also relevant to you will be some scientific and regulatory checks that apply or not, maybe to your ingredient or to a specific food product. So I don't know if, any of you is currently looking at novel foods kind of application or GRAS approval in the US, but this is also very much part of the journey, and that would have to be carefully strategized in terms of timeline, in terms of budget, because the food industry has some very kind of stringent, rigid requirement when it comes down to new ingredients or formulation. All right, so again, just want to give you a little bit more detail on how the negotiation or the selection of an external partner could look like. How do you reach out to those people, and what are the discussion points that you may have? All right, so in a nutshell, we have covered product and service and how those need to meet the consumer's requirements and expectation. And then we've also looked at the processes, the governance, the different phases that are required to support product development and innovation in the food industry. So it's quite intense, and I've tried to bring it to your attention in such a way that, you know, it will give you this kind of overview of the food industry, and end-to-end activities, but also a multidisciplinary approach that is relevant when we look at food product development and innovation. Any questions?
Any questions from anyone? If you're typing your question, or you can just raise your hand. Doesn't look like it's right now.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, you know,
Ah,
some of it. Yes, please.
yeah,
I,
Francesco, go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me now? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. No, great. Thanks again for the amazing presentation, Raphael. It's really helpful. And I just have a question because just to explain our situation, we work in the food supply chain. So we're working with fruit waste from aggregators in South America. These are the ones that export to pretty much supermarkets. You know, the ugly fruits comes to our process and we upcycle. But we are starting with cosmetics because of the higher margins, and we want to bring. And I know you mentioned it, and we want to bring kind of a bit of innovation by combining both worlds. But we've been struggling because many of the accelerators or investors they don't see us as a food tech company because we are selling to cosmetics. Is there like a way that we can navigate this? Because I believe that in the future, the market won't be defined by only cosmetics. We're already exploring like farm and food, but it's been really hard to actually present that. So I don't know if you have like a way in where this innovation can extend or put us within the scope of startups that are actually in the food section.
and sorry, Francesco, just so to that I understand your ask. Um, who are you trying to engage with? The accelerator programs for the food industry?
Like for example, EIT food, right? Or then there's some VCs in Sweden that they invest in food tech, but they see us more like pharma or like kind of health because our ingredient is an antioxidant, right? That's sold in cosmetics, no? But our whole supply chain is in food, no? So we don't know how to navigate this space, especially in the pre-seed stage that we are. And that was just a question if you have an idea, how can we probably present it in a more innovative way towards this space? Because I believe that the networks in IIT is a lot of value for us, but maybe not the market in terms of the product we're building right now, no? But in the future.
Yeah, very good question. And I understand the fact that you need to um, build the narrative in such a way that it's going to resonate with your audience. So, I mean, I haven't seen the slide deck or, you know, the pitch, elevator pitch that you're trying to present, but you might just adjust the verbiage and the narrative and the value proposition to meet the expectations of your target audience here. So if it's an antioxidant, like, I mean, you have a very strong story in the food industry, but you just need to build that story in such a way that you don't mention cosmetic if you talk to EIT food. So you might know it as part of your overall business model and operating model for your business, but you always need to refine the positioning to meet your objectives. So again, happy to take that offline and look at it with you. But if you have an antioxidant, um, it's very relevant in the food industry. So we just need to talk about it and align that with the category in the food industry. And I agree with you. So from a supply chain perspective, it's completely into food. So you leverage that, and then you explain how the applications are also in the food space. But in the back of your mind, you know that from a value and commercial viability perspective, this is only going to be phase two for you, because first you're going to tackle cosmetic. So to be honest, it is interesting to see that when you look at companies, they have the same ingredient, let's say an antioxidant, and they have completely different sales force, whether they talk to pet food category or pharma or health dietary supplements. So the verbiage, the value proposition, the brochures are completely different depending on the category or the industry that they talk to. So it's what we call fragmentation of those ingredients, right? You identified the bioactive, and you extract that bioactive. So in your case, let's say it's an antioxidant, you extract it from upcycled processes or ingredients.
Pomegranate seed. Yeah, it's pomegranate seed, just so you
Yeah.
know. Pomegranate seed.
And then you build a full story for a specific industry. But even like big companies, they don't have the same people who talk to food and the one who talk to to cosmetic. They have completely different sales force, because they know that their customer only want to talk to people who understand their category or their industry. So like, EIT Food and other organizations like that, they have their own list, their own tick box exercise, and you just need to align with that. And that's why big companies, they have the same ingredients fitting different categories and different industry, but they have very differentiated sales force that speak the language, understand the category, and have all the supportive material to demonstrate that. So you can't just, mix and match to suit yourself. You need to align all of that kind of value proposition and engagement and discussion with your target audience, whatever that is. If it is pharma, if it is cosmetics, so it's often, completely different slide deck. So you're probably limited in terms of resources, and that's fine. Just wear a different hat.
Great, thank you so much. And just to a part two, since that's your recommendation, many times when we spoke with the food hat, they always talk about the margins, and how we're going to reach a price while helping the farmer, because our story is that the farmer, they get money for the waste, and we've seen that the reason why food is still a second phase is because we don't have that competitive in price, even though the ingredient or the molecules already exist, they don't understand why ours is 40% more expensive. But in cosmetics, it felt like they were looking for that because of certain kind of regulation, or a more like a direct contact to the client, or they put the premium to the client pays more the premium if they're putting a natural thing in their skin rather than eating something. So in that sense, would you say like, okay, maybe I focus in cosmetic, and whenever I can answer this question of the margins, I should start exploring the food industry, or I could also position myself as a premium antioxidant in the food industry?
So for me, I would kind of, fake it until I make it. So what I think you're trying to tell me is, we have a nice graph here in terms of scale up and margin, right? So you start with the high value, small volume, right, which can be cosmetic. And then you're going to hopefully be able to enter the food industry by having maybe lower margins but higher volume. Am I right in
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, you don't need to tell everybody your story, but that's your strategy, right? That's how you work it out from a financial perspective, from a regulatory perspective. That makes complete sense. That's how a lot of companies operate. And what you can do is that there is a time frame in which you're hoping to get that what you call it, that sweet spot there, that's crossover, and you can still engage. I mean, you can still test the water and tell them that you're going to do this, and um, so some of it you keep it to yourself, right? Because it's part of your strategy, and then based on that strategy that you have developed for your company, you're going to engage with the different stakeholder and tell them what they want to hear. It's still part of your strategy. I'm not telling you to lie, but you don't need to be too open and to elaborate too much in terms of how you're going to make your business viable. You just need to tell them what they want to know. So for the cosmetic people, you want to tell them that you have a unique ingredient that has very strong antioxidant properties, and that's going to work very well into a specific cream or a shampoo or a lip balm or whatever you have identified, because everything I said about the category and the application is still very relevant. So make it work into a category that is more likely to engage or be enhanced with your ingredients. So that's what you do with those people. And you know that it's going to give you the cash flow, hopefully to scale. And then at some point being able to engage with the food people. But engage with the food people anyway, because the food people are also very aware that this is the operating model of a lot of good entrepreneurs out there, right? It makes complete sense. So in the food space, you identified the market that are more likely to engage with your ingredient, or that are more likely to give you the regulatory approval, or that have trends that are more aligned with the positioning of your. So just strategize that, Francesco, but and engage with those stakeholders in the way they want to be engaging with you, because as I said, they have different checklists, right? So you keep your strategy to yourself, you engage with those different stakeholders. Some of them might say, well, look, that's interesting, but you're not ready. Come back to us in 12 months' time. All you need to do here is strategize your business in such a way that you're going to be financially, commercially viable, and you're going to phase and stage the value and the innovation opportunity to maximize the technology or the ingredient that you have, right?
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for the answer.
Yeah. So, I mean, as I said, there is only so much I can tell you because I don't know enough, but it's I've come across many different organizations who really isolate the narrative and the value proposition to engage with different category, different industry. And overall, the idea here is to maximize the value, the business opportunity of what you have, right? So you have already kind of worked heavily on the supply chain and how you're going to put your hands on that raw material. Then you probably spend quite a lot of time in processing that raw material so that you have value added ingredient, and then you basically uh, map out how you're going to extract value. So in terms of functionality, in terms of application, in terms of regulatory, in terms of value, in terms of consumer, so do all of that exercise and then you decide the time frame at which you're going to launch those ingredients. But in the meantime, you have nothing to lose by engaging with some of those stakeholders, preferably early, right? Because in terms of acceptance and in terms of perception, it's very good to test your ingredient with different audiences, go to conferences, speak about your ingredient, the benefit and stuff. But all of that narrative is different depending on who you engage with. So it will have to be adjusted. You can't say, oh yeah, we've got a nice deck now and we're going to throw it out there and see, what response we have. Everything has to be very kind of targeted, customized to meet the needs of a specific audience.
Yeah, thank you so much for the answer. It's just like as two co-founders in the beginning, it's a lot of work not to adapt, but I think it's really relevant, especially for our case. So thanks again. Hopefully for many more in the cohort as well.
Yeah, and it will make it more manageable for you as well, because you're obviously facing a multitude of different opportunities now, and you need to focus, right? So don't dilute yourself by thinking that you can just, invade all of that. Just be strategic and focused in how you're going to tackle all of those opportunities.
Perfect. Thanks a lot.
You're very welcome.
All right, thank you. I think that was very in-depth, hopefully useful for you, Francesco. Do we have any other questions? Did any other question come to your mind, startups, during the discussion?
I think, what can happen sometimes is when there is a lot of information being thrown at people, it takes a couple of hours or maybe even a couple of days for people to digest and questions comes to mind. So I'll be very happy to take any question that might emerge over the next couple of days or next couple of hours, right? And again, it is not that easy for like me to give you an overview and at the same time give you enough nuggets for you to make it relevant to your project or to your business, right? So I'll be quite happy to look at different case studies that you want to address depending on your project or your business if you want, yeah.
Yeah, I think that could be very, very relevant for startups. Yeah, I see Tim's comment in the chat saying would be very helpful, still digesting all of the information. Yeah, exactly as you said, Raphael, it's a lot of information. You need to yeah, digest it, format it into their own ideas, and then come up with questions. Unless we have any other questions that are going to come up now. No, Catherine is
Well, I
clapping.
have
Thank
to
you,
say
Catherine.
we
Yeah.
started with 21 and we finished with 21. So as far as I'm concerned, this is big success that we didn't lose too many, that people felt that this was interesting enough that they would stay on the line. So a big thank you to all of you for being present today, for your attendance. Happy to discuss anything in more detail if you want to pick my brain on something. I think I shared my website here. If you want to have a look at what I do, I actually launched a new business and currently working on the development of a new product. So it's very focused on perimenopausal and menopausal women. So we are very much talking about personalized nutrition. And I was really exploring the B2B space, working as a consultant in product design and formulation. But then I decided, you know what, let's go for B2C and offer a bit of support and a service and a product to a specific cohort. So I'm on that journey myself. If you have any questions, please let me know. And big thank you to Augustin and the MassChallenge team for having me again this year. It's always a pleasure to engage with all of those entrepreneurs. As I said, at the beginning of this session, I find that the caliber of you getting involved with MassChallenge is constantly being elevated, and it's really wonderful to see you disrupting, transforming the food industry with your product, with your technology, with your different mindset and skill set. It's very refreshing for me to see that happening in the food sector.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Raphael. It was a true pleasure to have you back. Thank you very much for all of that. let's say, thick flow of information. It was, I think, very useful. I think you can see that in the chat. For the people, the audience, I'm going to launch a little poll that we run at the end of every session. Please fill it in, and then Rafael, as usual, I'll share with you the results at the end. But again, thank you very much. Thanks to the audience. Thank you for the interesting questions of the participants.